So welcome to topic 1 in our Somatic Self-Compassion weekly practice cycle program. I'm delighted that you're here. Welcome. Lovely to be exploring this material with you. I'm Christy Arbin. I'm the developer of Somatic Self-Compassion and the teacher for this program. So I just want to orient us to what will be happening in this first of our practice cycle videos. After I've just welcomed you, basically, we'll move into a little practice. So you'll be invited to do, it's about a 12-minute practice on settling and grounding your awareness in sound. So that's a little practice. And I have my notes down here, so I look at my notes and I look back at the camera. Then you'll be invited into 2 minutes of reflection time after that little meditation. And then I'm going to offer my reflections after doing the meditation. I thought it might be helpful for you to hear what it means to reflect on a meditation practice. Maybe it's not something you've tried before, so I will tell you what my reflections are on doing that practice. Then we'll have a little attention restoration meditation, which is simply a recording of a scene in nature. It's a way to transition. It's a way to restore our attention with something that's fascinating, or hopefully fascinating, as we move from one piece of the program to another. So this is what attention restoration meditations can be helpful for. So you're invited to simply watch and listen. It's only about a minute, so enjoy that one. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about what somatic self-compassion is, what this program is, where it came from, and a little bit about the structure of the program. You'll then be invited into some reflection questions around what brought you here, and there'll be a little bit of time for you to reflect on those questions. Then I'm going to talk about some of the central components of somatic self-compassion. I'll be talking about touchstones, elements, and self-inquiry, which are 3 things that we'll unpack as we move through this program. Then I'll invite you into some reflection questions into the Touchstone Questions, which, as I said, are a central part of somatic self-compassion. And then we'll finish off with a little picture quote for you to consider, and then we'll transition out. So thanks for being here. Enjoy the practice cycle. So you're invited to find a relatively comfortable, supportive position for yourself. You can have your eyes opened or closed. You can have your video on or off. Whatever feels most supportive for you. Just giving your system the opportunity to settle, to arrive. allowing the weight of your body to be held by the furniture or the floor, whatever it is that's supporting your body. Letting your muscles know that the furniture or the floor can take the weight of your body now, can hold your body. Maybe your muscles might enjoy an invitation to release, to relax a little in this moment. Bringing patience to this process of settling, of arriving. There's no need to rush, no need to force anything. Allowing your physical body and allowing your energy to settle down, to be heavy, to be drawn towards the earth. And then as you're feeling settled, or as settled as you can access in this moment, beginning to notice sound in your environment. So holding your seat, remaining grounded, and waiting for sound to come to you. Allowing sound to play for you. There's no need to chase sound, to try and find sounds or name them. Simply sitting in the midst of sound, being aware of any sounds. And if you notice that your awareness moves away from sound to the future, to the past, or to some other sensory experience, you can choose, would I like to bring my awareness back to sound? Am I curious about how that might feel to ground my awareness in something simple like sound right now? And soon we'll begin to transition out of this little arriving meditation. Before we do, you might like to bring your awareness to sound for just a few more moments. And then beginning to transition, beginning to expand your awareness to your whole body, Getting in touch with the physicality of your body, maybe moving your fingers, your wrists, your toes, your ankles, your shoulders, your torso. Expanding your awareness further out to your environment. If your eyes were closed, you might like to open them now and slowly take a look around the space that you're in, orienting to this space. Having a stretch, a sip of your drink if you have one. You're invited now into 2 minutes of reflection or stillness, whatever you feel called to, and feeling free to jot down any notes as you reflect on your experience. So what I noticed as I was doing that meditation is firstly the relief at slowing down, the relief at letting my body rest into the seat that I'm on, noticing how it was for my muscles to release down, for the chair to take the weight of my body, and there was the relief and the release in that felt really nice, really a bit like coming home, I guess. And then to expand awareness to sound, and sound felt, I experienced sound as being more interesting, more, because it was the only thing that I was focusing on. I got to sort of delight in sound a little bit. So, and actually I noticed the sounds that weren't delightful, and I actually got up and shut the windows so I couldn't hear quite so many sounds, but sound became a bit more precious to me, I guess. a bit more something to savour, something to spend time with. And I did notice that my mind moved off to thoughts. And so I tended to sort of move from being aware of my body in my seat, being aware of sound, and then being aware that I was in thought, and then sort of coming back to usually to my body, then to sound, and then I would go to thought again, and just sort of allowing this to happen, this sort of swirling of awareness, and enjoying not putting too much pressure on myself, just allowing myself to be with those experiences. And just that felt really kind. It felt really gentle. Once again, it felt like a coming home. There's nothing I could do wrong with this practice. Just immersing myself in my experience for this, 10 or 12 minutes was all I needed to do. And that felt really permission giving. And so I felt quite settled by the time during the meditation, and then by the time the meditation had finished, I felt as if I felt calmer. So I just want to tell you a little bit about where somatic self-compassion came from. And I may have put this in some of my introductory material. So as some of you know, I'm a certified mindful self-compassion teacher. I teach the program that Chris Germer and Kristen Neff created actually 10 years ago. They created the Mindful Self-Compassion program. And I worked with Chris and Kristen for a number of years to help get the Centre for Mindful Self-Compassion up and running. I was like their first administrator, their first administrative director. I created their website. We started up the whole nonprofit thing together. So I've been very fortunate to apprentice with Chris and Kristen around self-compassion training. And I was talking with the executive director of the Center for Mindful Self-Compassion, Steve Hickman, a number of years ago about the somatic aspect in mindful self-compassion and how I would like to see more of the somatic aspect of the understanding what's happening in our body. Why do we feel the way that we feel? And why do particular kinds of self-soothing, why do they work? What's going on there? And after having a bit of a conversation with him, the idea came to me, I'd really like to create a somatic self-compassion where we actually dive into those questions. Why am I feeling the way that I feel at the level of neurochemicals, at the level of my mammalian brain, my motivations, and why do things like soothing touch or giving myself a hug, why do they feel good? What can I understand about those things? And then based on that understanding, how can I then be as creative as possible in finding ways to soothe myself? Also really interested in us developing more safely our ability to feel what's actually happening in our body. This is our interoceptive awareness, the sense of our internal experience, and wanting us to be able to start to developing interoceptive awareness is it's quite a long-term sort of venture, but we can start in somatic self-compassion to get in touch with our body signals and the resources in our body, the wisdom in our body. It's a lot of information that we get from our body, and if we can't connect with what our body's telling us or asking of us, we're missing out on a lot of quite important, quite valuable information. So we'll start to explore, how can I listen to this wisdom in my body? How can I connect more? So there's sort of the main pieces with somatic self-compassion that I wanted to focus in on. More safely being able to connect with internal experience, understanding the mechanism of self-soothing, why does that work? And understanding why we feel stressed, how does that work as well? So they're sort of in the middle of the program. The science pieces are in the middle of the program. Everything we do to start is to build up our capacity and our motivation to learn about that material and to use it for our practice. And then everything we do after that is designed to help us integrate that understanding more into our understanding of ourself and our sense of spirituality, our connection with our community and what's important to us. The somatic self-compassion program is broken up into 15 topics, and these sort of come under a larger umbrella of three, what we call journeys, 3 journeys. So the first block of topics, there are 4 topics in the first journey. The first journey is called Motivating Somatic Self-Compassion. We explore what self-compassion is. We connect our values with our desire to practice self-compassion. We explore our strengths, how we might leverage our strengths to support our self-compassion practice. We set some practice goals, and we'll look for easeful ways to motivate ourselves towards self-compassion. One of the trickiest things about practicing can be finding the motivation, finding the good reason for why we're practicing self-compassion. And we can find those good reasons simply by looking at, what do we value? What do I value in life, and how does that connect directly to my self-compassion practice? So these are the first 4 topics, and throughout those topics there'll be lots of opportunities to practice, to do meditations, to do reflection exercises, and to learn about ourselves and self-compassion practice. The second journey is 7 topics, and this is sort of the science of somatic self-compassion. So once we have learned about ourselves and why we want to practice self-compassion, and we've started to do self-compassion practice, then we'll be invited into understanding basically what causes our stress and why somatic self-compassion practices can address that stress. And we look at that at the level of neurochemicals. So what are the neurochemicals of stress and the neurochemicals that help soothe and support us? We are invited to create some rituals of self-care to introduce little practices throughout our day that really are not much different to what we're already doing, but when they're approached with an attitude of self-care, self-compassion and self-regard, they sort of take on a greater meaning. They feel more as if they are aligning us with our self-compassion values and goals. We'll explore sensory modulation, which is how we use or how we can use our senses as a way to soothe ourselves. So how might we use sound as an object of our meditation to soothe ourselves? How might we use touch? How might we use movement? How might we use our sense of balance? So it will explore all of the senses and connect them with self-compassion practices. A really important part of the program is to normalize the mechanisms of stress, to normalize what our body does to protect us and why we feel stress. Stress is a piece of information. Stress is not a problem. Initially, it can become a problem after a while, but if we can simply learn to listen to that information, to take that information that we're getting from our body, to validate, to honor our stress responses, and then we're in a much better position to take action, to do something about our stress. So learning about the stress response is really important there. And we'll also talk a bit about trauma at that point. We won't be exploring trauma in depth. We talk about trauma because it's part of being human, basically. We will not talk about trauma stories. We will not talk about events or experiences. We'll talk about what practices can we do now that tend to things like our fight and flight response. And then we'll also explore or start to explore how we can develop a greater sense of interoceptive awareness. So this means checking in with our internal body signals. What is my body telling me about my experience? We need to know what our body is telling us before we can connect it to what's important to us, what our values are, what's important for the happiness of ourselves and our nervous system. And then we can do something about it. We can take action. So then the third journey is called practicing through connecting. And this is a 4-topic block. And this sort of brings us full circle back from our first journey. We explore values again. We explore motivation again. And we're looking at these things with an enhanced understanding of things like our body systems, our stress response, our neurochemicals. So we revisit some of that material with a deeper understanding of ourselves, basically. We explore flow or engagement as a practice, as a possible self-compassion practice and self-care practice. We learn about Eudemonic and Hedonic well-being. So these are kinds of well-being. One is about being aligned with our values, and one is about pleasure in the moment, usually related to our senses. We'll explore self-inquiry and spirituality. We'll actually be doing a lot of self-inquiry all throughout the program. There's quite a scaffolded structure for exploring self-inquiry that we'll be looking at in the first 4 topics. But we'll come to that again in the 3rd journey. We'll learn about how healing in community can address any wounds that we may have felt through connections we had in the past in previous relationships. We don't need to go back to previous relationships that we've been in order to heal. We can actually heal in new relationships, especially in a supportive community. And finally, we'll explore personal resources that support us in our ongoing somatic self-compassion practice. There are lots of ways we can support ourselves to continue with our practice. So they are the 3 journeys: motivating self-compassion, motivating somatic self-compassion, developing somatic self-compassion, and then practicing through connecting, our 3 journeys. So you're invited to reflect on 2 reflection questions. And one is, what brought me to self-compassion training? And the other one is, what brought me to somatic self-compassion training? I'd like to give you a few minutes to reflect on those, and you might like to jot down a few notes just to help you understand a little bit more clearly what your motivation is in embarking on this somatic self-compassion journey. So in somatic self-compassion, we're invited to check in regularly with 3 embodiment questions called touchstones. So a touchstone is a reference or a guide that we return to regularly in order to gauge our experience. How am I going, basically, is what a touchstone can help us to ascertain. It's a way to check in with how we are in any particular moment. And so these 3 touchstone questions, they offer points of reference for our felt experience in each moment. The touchstone questions, and you'll be invited to reflect on these all throughout this program. They are, what do I feel? What do I need? And what can I do? What do I feel? What do I need? What can I do? Fairly straightforward questions, but sometimes we don't take the time to ask these things of ourselves. So we don't know how to respond with self-compassion. So this is a way to invite us into a little ritual of checking in and responding to our needs. So these 3 touchstone questions relate to the 3 elements in somatic self-compassion. The 3 elements are affectionate awareness, courageous connection, and radical response. So these are the conceptual roots of somatic self-compassion. They inform the touchstone questions. We ask the touchstone question, what do I feel, to develop the element of affectionate awareness. And this is kindly noticing our thoughts, our emotions, our sensations, any imagery that we're experiencing, and any reflexive responses, which is automatic responses that might be happening in the moment. These 5 things give us information about our internal experience. And so we ask the question, what do I feel? And we check in with these 5 parts of our experience. So affectionate awareness is developed through inviting our awareness in closer to our experience. And you'll hear me say that often. You're invited to bring your awareness in closer to your experience. We offer kindness towards ourselves during our meditation. So this is cultivating affectionate awareness, noticing what we feel and noticing that kindly. So we do meditations as part of each topic, and there are links to a number of meditations, extra meditations you can do to cultivate affectionate awareness. We also practice affectionate awareness when we connect with our strengths, our values, our motivations, and our goals, which we do in the first part of somatic self-compassion, in the first journey. So we'll explore affectionate awareness in more detail as we move through the somatic self-compassion program. We ask the question, what do I need next? And this helps us to develop the element of courageous connection. This means determining if our experience is pleasant, neutral, or unpleasant, and also connecting with our values, both our long-term sort of more existential values or our soul's purpose, and also the value we have of taking care of our body. Our body actually has an inherent value of self-care, even one that doesn't have words. And so asking, what do I need, checking in with the quality of my experience can help me to, when compared with my values, determine what is it that's lacking in this moment, if there is something lacking. So courageous connection is developed when we learn about why our body is responding in particular ways to the things that we're experiencing from our external world. We make meaning of our stress response. We make meaning of what we're feeling. We practice courageous connection in somatic self-compassion through when we explore neurochemicals and when we validate the protective stress response cycle. So our system is always looking to protect us. Our stress response cycle is ultimately protective of us. Also, when we identify links between our past experiences and our present moment experience and our values. So connecting with all of these, one of the reasons I call this courageous connection is because connecting our current stress with our values, or how maybe we're not aligned with our values, or how maybe our body is not feeling embedded in values in the present moment. This does take some courage. So this is hence the courageous connection title. So we identify if our experience as pleasant, neutral, unpleasant. This helps us to work out the personal meaning for us in our experience. So we'll explore courageous connection more explicitly as we move through the program. And then we ask the question, what can I do, as a way to develop the element of radical response. So radical response means we're actually feeling motivated to respond to what we need. And we do this through alleviating unpleasant experiences. If we're not having an unpleasant experience, somatic self-compassion invites us to companion a neutral experience, to stay with a neutral experience, and also to savor a pleasant experience. Radical response is cultivated when we learn new ways to tend to our stress. And the reason I call this radical is because we may never have tended to our stress in the ways that we'll be invited to in somatic self-compassion. Ways we might respond to our stress include validating our experience rather than judging our experience. And this can be quite radical for many of us to learn how to not judge our experience. We use body signal resources, which are basically the 5 body signals, thoughts, emotions, sensations, imagery, and reflexive responses or movement. We can turn these into resources to help respond to ourselves. So in somatic self-compassion, we'll explore how do these parts of our experience, or how can they be brought in as self-compassion tools. We'll look at that more a little bit later on. We'll also look at developing, or how to develop, opportunities for flow or engagement, and how to bring more self-care into our experience. Radical response means also framing neutral and positive experiences in a way that connects us with ourselves more frequently. We often might disregard neutral experiences because they're not very exciting. We don't feel like they're telling us anything. However, if we can learn to be with neutral experiences, maybe to practice a little self-inquiry about what's actually happening for us, if we can hold space for a neutral experience, it actually enhances our day-to-day experience, our experience in daily life. So we use information from the first 2 touchstones, what do I feel and what do I need, in order to determine what our radical response might be. And so we have a number of choices. I've already spoken to some of those. We can savor a pleasant experience, linger a little bit longer with a present experience. We can companion a neutral experience. We can alleviate an unpleasant experience through a number of different choices that we have. Number 1 is to practice intentional resistance. And what this means is that we intentionally turn away from a challenging experience as a way to get some breathing space from that experience. And mostly we do that when we know we do not have the resources in the moment to tend to that experience. So a very skillful response is to actually turn our attention away from that experience. So that's the first one. The second one is to expand our awareness to hold a warm, affectionate space for our experience, to allow our experience to unfold. So this is holding space. This is a fairly typical mindfulness practice, to expand our awareness and hold space for our experience. The third way to alleviate an unpleasant experience is to ground ourselves, to use a sensory practice so that we can keep our experience company. so that we can bring kindness and curiosity to our experience, so that we can bear witness to our experience. And then the fourth practice we might engage in is to actually turn towards our embodied experience and to soothe ourselves as we do that. So when we have the resources to hold a challenging experience, it's a lovely practice, it's a lovely act of self-compassion to be with our experience, to fully acknowledge and validate our experience, and to tend to ourselves, especially tending to those parts of us that need care as we're being with that challenging experience. We're validating that challenging experience. So we'll explore all of these components of radical response more fully as we move through the Somatic Self-Compassion program. And so throughout Somatic Self-Compassion, we'll be invited to do some self-inquiry. This is a program where we can develop this capacity to bring more curiosity and more responsiveness to our own experience through a practice of self-inquiry. And we'll be using the touchstones and the elements as a guide for our little rituals of self-inquiry. So you're invited into some self-inquiry around the 3 touchstone questions. You're invited to ask yourself, what do I feel in this very moment? What can I notice in my present moment experience? Second touchstone question, what do I need? Based on what I notice, what is my body or my mind telling me I need right now? If I need anything, maybe I don't need anything right now. And then the third touchstone question, based on what I notice and what I need, how can I respond to this as skillfully as I'm able to in this moment? What can I do? And the day came when the risk to remain tight in a bud was more painful than the risk it took to blossom. So what do I feel right now? What do I need? What can I do?